Hello and welcome to Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell. It's an Inside the Birds presentation. I'm Geoff Mosher alongside Adam Caplan. Joining us to give another tape breakdown of the Eagles' last game is Greg Cosell. Greg, the Eagles narrowly squeezed past the Cleveland Browns on Sunday, 20-16 at home in Week 6, and we're looking forward to getting into what the tape showed you. But let's start with this. This has been on my mind quite a bit. Even though your observations are all tape-based, when you're evaluating a player's performance or a development or aggression, obviously the context of the opponent has to come into play. So how do the Browns, being one of the worst teams in football and now 1-5, factor into what you're observing on tape and how you put that into perspective?
Well, I would say offensively, they're one of the worst teams in football. I don't
Good
think
point.
that's true defensively. I think their offense has brought them down and hurt their defense. But if you just look at their defense with their personnel and the coach, Jim Schwartz, who's been doing this a long time and is very good, I don't think you'd say their defense is one of the worst in football. In
Correct.
fact, last year, you could argue in some statistical categories, it was one of the best in football. So to answer your question, let's then look at it from the perspective of one of the worst units in football, the Browns offense versus the Eagles defense. So what I look for is not necessarily individual players on the Eagles. I look for schematics and tactics based on what the Eagles had done previously in previous games. So for instance, and we spoke about this with our Patreon group on Tuesday evening, the Eagles had struggled mightily, as everybody knows who follows them, to rush the quarterback with their 4 defensive linemen. So I look to see how are they going to rush the quarterback. Now, we know that Deshaun Watson and the Browns, with injuries along their O-line, that he's been sacked a lot. But that's not relevant to how the Eagles want to play and get better at what they do. Okay, because they know that the Browns, obviously you want to win that game, but it's still one game in a season that has many more to go, and they've got to continue to improve and be able to pressure quarterbacks. So, Geoff, it's a little long-winded, but to answer your question, I look at the tactics I see the Eagles deploy in order to better rush the quarterback. That was one of my main things when I put on their defensive tape, because I happen not to have seen much of the game because it was my grandson's second birthday party. So when I saw the tape, it was a little bit fresh to me. And, I know that Deshaun Watson's been sacked a lot, but I don't just look at that. I want to see what the Eagles were doing.
Well, speaking of that, Greg, before we kind of get started into the weeds, so to speak, was it a different game plan by Fangio? Is it a lot of similar stuff, or did they change it up a little bit?
Well, I thought in terms of pressure concepts, Adam, they changed things up. There were more blitzes. There were some 5-man fronts that were different than the 5-man fronts we're used to seeing. When by that I mean they lined up at times what we call loaded fronts, where they had 3 defensive linemen to one side of the center, and they would walk up on the ball opposite the load. It's a different 5-man front look than your sort of more conventional one, and it normally involves some stunt concepts because you use it as a pressure front more than just, oh, here's our 5-man normal front. The other thing that really stood out was the fact that Cooper DeJean was obviously the slot corner in this game, playing maybe all but 4 or 5 snaps in the game, and I think he blitzed off the slot 4 or 5 times. Obviously, that's an addition. That's another dimension, another element to how they want to pressure the quarterback, because Avonte Maddox is not that kind of player. Cooper DeJean is.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Cooper DeJean and go through some all-22 on it, Greg. They certainly used him interestingly. And I'm glad we start with defense, Greg, because as much of the concern there was over the offense in their last appearance before the Browns game, it was a really bad defensive display against Tampa Bay. And there were not nearly as many injuries, if any, on that side of the ball. One of the big issues was the defensive line, stopping the run, making tackles, generating pressure. What did the tape show in this game specifically about the interior D linemen, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Moro Ajomo?
They're still struggling just in terms of pass rush to rush the quarterback with their interior group, and even on the edge as well. Although you could certainly argue that Bryce Huff had his best game in terms of he had some snaps where he clearly was a factor as an edge rusher. I thought that Ojomo had some good snaps as well. I remember on the Browns' second possession on a 3rd and long, he had a really strong power pass rush versus Joel Bitonio, who's a very good guard. He drove him right back into the pocket. And what's interesting is they obviously believe that, Geoff, because he played significant snaps on 3rd down. He and Carter were the predominant interior pass rushers on 3rd down. So based on games and practice and what they obviously saw all through the offseason, they feel that he has that kind of ability as he continues to grow and improve, we hope. Jordan Davis, and I remember 2 really good plays against the run, but for the most part, he's a run defender. That's what he's settled into. We've talked about the fact that pretty much most players declare what they are by their 3rd season. It's now, I think, pretty evident that Jordan Davis is a run defender. He does not play on 3rd down. He has played no snaps this year. I did this research. He's played no snaps this year on 3rd down and 6+ yards to go. So that tells you that they do not see him as a pass rusher. And do you guys think that's likely to change in the next week or 2?
How about the next 3 months?
Nope.
No.
No, I'm not being sarcastic. I'm
No.
just
No, I was
you know,
thinking
Yeah.
what you're thinking. How much is he going to actually be on the field, say, against the Bengals, who are going to try to throw the ball all over the place?
Good
and not
point.
run
He's
as
just
much?
he's not that guy. I know, Greg, you
Right.
had said, you had told us last year, you thought that for the pick to feel that it was the right one, eventually he's going to have to be a pass rusher.
I believe you guys may remember this. I thought Howie spoke about that when he drafted him.
Of course,
Did he not,
I did.
Geoff? You remember this probably better than I do.
Yep. He said if he doesn't develop into more than just a run down lineman, then we didn't do our jobs with this pick.
Because they traded up to pick 13, did they not?
Correct.
Wasn't
They did trade up. Yes,
They did, over
trade up.
Kyle Hamilton, I believe. Was,
Right.
yeah.
And again, that, I'm not knocking you, Geoff. All that stuff's always easy when another guy develops into a great player. But but the point is that you don't, in this league, the way it is now structured, with the passing game being so prevalent, and even though there's more running now, but the passing game is still the way offenses think and defenses want to prevent. You don't trade up for a D tackle unless he can rush the quarterback.
Right. Now, they're not the only ones struggling to rush. And by the way, to your point, the Eagles have already seen Vita Vea, who is a player that they would hope Davis could be like, and they're going to see Dexter Lawrence on Sunday against the Giants, who is a similar built player who the Eagles would love Jordan Davis to be like. How about the edge rusher? Because they would love Nolan Smith to be like Micah Parsons. But what do you know about his? What did the tape show?
I would
him? What
say
are the
that
stats
Smith
say?
showed just a little more in terms of noticing him on tape, making some plays in the run game and showing some range and speed, which he has. But now you get into whether he can ever develop into a pass rusher. Most great pass rushers, I think, and I know this might sound like a cliche, but I think if you spoke to coaches, they would tell you that great pass rushers, besides having obvious traits, have a knack for being able to rush the quarterback. Just like we talk about quarterbacks, some guys just have a feel for making window throws. Other guys don't have that feel. I'm not sure Nolan Smith is a pass rusher. First of all, he's not. There's no power element to his game. And having been fortunate enough to be at the O-line masterminds the last 2 years and getting opportunities to speak with offensive tackles, this is not coming from me. I'm not an offensive tackle. Speaking to offensive tackles, they tell you that if a pass rusher cannot attack you with power, that they're not really a problem to deal with. Sure, every once in a while can a guy beat you with a great quickness move? Sure, but it's very difficult to make a living in the NFL as a pass rusher on the edge if you don't have a power element to your game. And up to this point, he has not shown that. 118 snaps in 5 games, 50 of those snaps, he rushed the quarterback. His pass rush win rate is only 11%, which is a low number.
Yeah.
So
I imagine
Geoff,
it's low. Yeah.
I want to go back to training camp. So, I was there, I don't know, 10 or 12 times. And I noticed a trend. Like when he went against the twos, he won more than he lost. But when he went against the ones, and I get it, Eagles have a great offensive line. That's not the point. Never won. In fact, he never even got close.
Right.
And they would move him, by the way. They were moving him around to help him out. He just couldn't get in there. And look, this guy's a first-round pick. Whether he should have been or not, it's not my point.
Right.
But much was expected of this guy. And I don't know that he has it, Greg, inside of him to get there.
One move that he needs to really work on, you see this with smaller edge rushers, okay? I'm certainly not comparing him to Von Miller, but Von Miller's not a 275-pound man. Von Miller was probably what, 240, 245? Would that probably be
When he
about
came
what he
in,
was?
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. When he
So
came in.
Nolan Smith would fall into that category. But the move that the smaller rushers have, and I actually had this conversation with Louis Riddick, who's in our building every Tuesday. And sometimes he stops by when he has a few minutes, and we spend 10 minutes talking a little ball.
Cool.
The move that he needs is the one-arm stab. That's a power move. Now, he's obviously not going to run through offensive tackles. He's not Nick Bosa, who is, you talk to offensive tackles and they tell you how powerful he is just as a human being. He's not going to become Nick Bosa. But a lot of the smaller edge rushers have that one-arm stab where they put it right here. And that's a spot that is really no offensive lineman and nobody in any sport does this in response to anything. That's not a normal reaction to put your hands there. So this is where guys put their one arm stab, and you can push guys off balance if you can get in there.
Mhm.
That's the move he has to learn and master if he's to become at least some kind of quality edge rusher.
And you got to be super bendy, Greg. I had some college guys do scouting and saying that he just wasn't bendy enough. Like he was athletic, but you got to be able to bend.
It's funny you say that because, yes, I agree 100%, but just being bendy is not the same as being able to flatten your rush path to the quarterback. There are guys who can bend, but then they can't quite stay on balance and flatten their rush path to the quarterback. So those are two different things.
Most of the changes that we saw in the game defensively really centered on what they were doing in the back end. We talked about Cooper DeJean in at the nickel spot for
Yes.
Avonte Maddox, who did still play. He played in dime, just a few snaps. So I want to focus attention here, Greg, on, I believe this is a second quarter sim pressure. I'll let you set it up here, where DeJean here is the nickel over on the edge there.
Yeah.
And he is going to come on a blitz.
So he's going to come. Yeah. And there's, yeah, obviously you're right. It's a sim pressure because if we see it again now, what will happen is they drop out. Is that
Brandon
Graham?
Graham right here at the edge? Yeah.
Does Graham drop out? I believe he does. If you run it normal, yeah.
Yep.
He drops
Yeah,
out. So, just so the audience knows what we mean by a sim pressure. A sim pressure means that you still rush 4. It's still a 4-man rush, but you're bringing either a second or a third level player as a 4th rusher. So, and you're dropping out a first level player. So it still becomes a 4-man rush. And almost always you play zone behind this because obviously when you're dropping out a D lineman, you're not really counting on them to match up man to man to anybody. Right. So it becomes a zone. Now here, as I recall in this play, I believe the Browns made a mistake in their pass protection because there's no way that yeah, they made a mistake here.
Yep, because Nakobe Dean is the not Nakobe Dean. I'm sorry, Moro Jomo here, 97.
Yeah.
Basically, just comes straight. He's not supposed to have a free rusher on this.
No.
Yes.
If a first level interior D lineman is free, there's a mistake made.
There's some problems.
Well, is it that they're setting up a backside screen here, Greg? Yes,
it's a screen. This is a screen.
Like yeah, it's just it's sort of
an
unlucky play
but
call.
You still can't let a guy totally free.
Right, you got to check him.
Post him. You've got to. Yeah, this is a screen to the wide side of the field. Yep. But he just gets in.
He's looking for a Pierre Strong.
Actually, they're setting up. This is a different kind of screen that takes longer. Notice what the back does. Is that Pierre Strong?
Strong. It is Strong. Yeah.
Yeah. Notice it's not just a conventional screen.
Right. He's going to cut to the middle.
Back inside into a middle screen, which takes longer, which makes it more imperative that you at least slow down rush because this won't have time to develop if a first level interior defender is allowed to be clean to the quarterback.
And I love, by the way, at the end of this, Cooper jumping here to try to he knows he's not going to get the sack. Ajomo's got the pressure, but if DeSean tries to throw this screen in that direction, Cooper is about 5 feet in the air to try to knock it down. I like that.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
Take his line of vision out. Yep.
So, Greg, this is something that is different. I don't believe we saw a whole lot of blitzing from Avonte Maddox. Certainly not game 1 3 or 4 times, correct?
Yeah, and Avonte Maddox is not really, and not that you have to be big to be a blitzer necessarily. Mike Hilton with the Bengals, and prior to that with the Steelers, was always a very good slot blitzer. But that's not really Avonte Maddox's game. And
Right.
Cooper DeJean is a bigger man. He's an explosive downhill athlete. He has very good straight line speed. He's a versatile, savvy player. So that's an addition. As I said, I think he blitzed 4 or 5 times. In fact, they got another sack when the Browns were deep in their own territory.
Hold
And it was
that thought. Hold that thought,
okay.
my friend.
Uh,
This
We've
was
got
also
exactly that.
this one I know well. This is also a sim pressure because Nolan Smith will drop out
Yep.
into the hook zone, which here ends up taking away where Deshaun Watson wants to throw the ball because down below the 2-man route to the boundary is slant flat. And I believe it's new Bill Amari Cooper running the slant, and Smith takes away that throw. So
Yep.
now what you have is Cooper DeJean coming clean off the field slot. And one big key here is Brandon Graham because he's in a wide sort of, not a real wide 9, but he's outside the tackle Jedrick Wills. So a critical piece here is that he has to slant hard inside to take Wills with him because that's who Wills is focused on. Now, one could argue it's possible Wills made a mistake here because the guard does slide out that way. But again, where DeJean comes from is not really in Wills' field of vision. And with Graham outside of him, he's thinking Graham all the way. So he slants hard. It shortens the edge for DeJean. He doesn't actually get credit for the sack, but he creates the sack.
That's because he tries to chicken wing him here instead of really knocking him on his butt. But he also gets sort of washed up in the traffic there.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
there's the initial pressure in the cleanup
Yeah.
sack.
and did you see him as a blitzer at all at Iowa? Did he blitz?
You know, he was an outside corner for the most part.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't,
He didn't really blitz a lot that I
Yeah.
can recall. I'm not
Okay.
going to sit here and say I remember every play.
Sure.
I
Okay.
watched a lot of games, and then he got hurt, of course, and
Yeah.
missed the rest of the season. But no, he was an outside corner. Now he's a
Yeah.
slot.
So this is new for him as a blitzer. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
But he's a really good football player.
Yeah.
He closes real well, boy. He's
Yeah.
got a nose.
This is
But,
this is a great showing, this angle of how Brandon occupies both blockers. I would have to think that you're right, that there's a mistake there, that the left tackle should have aborted a little quicker there and didn't realize it.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
the way
again,
they kind of look at it, it looks like he's trying to shove him out there.
Well, the guard clearly slides out, and because he slides out right into Wills, someone's wrong here. But again, you never know the answer to that. Obviously, Wills has his eyes on Graham because Graham's outside of him.
Right. And by the way, a nice job interior rush here by 93 Milton Williams. I mean, he's pushing the center, I believe. Yeah, center back into Watson, because at least Watson might have a ability to climb, or any quarterback, but there's no ability to climb here because
there's no ability to
interior
move.
pressure.
Yeah.
There you go. And then that's how they
And Thomas Booker there too.
Yep,
Yeah.
Thomas Booker played well. What have you been seeing out of Thomas Booker?
Thomas Booker has good snaps. I mean, obviously, he only plays, anywhere from 12 to 22 snaps, but he shows up. I mean, I don't want to say he's better than Jordan Davis, but I mean, you notice him on film.
All right, one more thing we're going to look at. It's more of a conceptual thing, Greg, where you're seeing a little bit more closer coverage. We talked about that from some of your back end players here. Now, this is a 3rd and 6. I want to say it's the second quarter. I'm going to play it out for you just so you see the linebackers. You see DeJean here. He's going to kind of walk back into what looks like a 2 shell, but then at the snap, he comes up. The linebackers blitz. It looks like one man here across.
This is cover 1.
Right. But what I wanted to illustrate on this is the big issue about corners giving too much cushion here. We have Mitchell and we have Slay as the outside corners, right? Playing up here, which I have to imagine is also a sign of when you're playing cover 1 and blitzing, you should do this, right?
Well, you don't want to give them it's 3rd down?
This is, I believe, 3rd and long. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, depending on the length of how many yards to go, you certainly don't want to give the quarterback an easy out throw if you're going to blitz. You don't want him to just get that back foot and have a throw. So, there's a lot of different ways to play on the back end when you blitz. There's many ways to do that. This is clearly cover 1, and they're choosing to play press in cover 1. So they disrupt, not necessarily disrupt, but they're right there off the ball.
Yep. By the way, Bryce Huff, for everybody who cares about this stuff, is in a 4-point stance.
Which he's a wide 9. He's wide.
Yeah, wide 9, 4-point stance. So I don't want to say that's a huge adjustment because he had been doing that, but You saw him get a pretty good get off here, and
Yep.
he's the closest guy to the quarterback as soon as Watson drops back. So that was a good rush by, I mean, he impacted this play,
That's
certainly.
absolutely a quality rush. The QR.
Yeah.
Good rush.
Quality rush. And then the pass was off base there.
Yeah.
There you go.
We talked with the Patreon group, I mentioned that DeJean could also line up sort of in a safety position, which he did there. He wasn't necessarily playing safety in a strict sense, but I think that because he's such a smart kid and a savvy player, I think he gives, I think there's an interchangeable element that potentially could play out between Gardner Johnson and DeJean. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that depending on how Vic Fangio sees it, that could happen as they play more games.
All right. Let us transition, Greg, to the offense. The 20 points shows that the Eagles are still against a good Browns defense, but still kind of finding themselves, even with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith both having touchdown catches. What did Jim Schwartz do to make life difficult for Kellen Moore here? Schematically.
I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, the Browns kind of, they're really interesting on the back end because Jim Schwartz is a late rotation, show you a lot of different looks. You're not sure sometimes whether something's cover 2 with a middle hole defender or cover 3 with a post safety dropping low. He gives you a lot of sort of you're not sure looks. And in this league that if you just have to wait half a beat, you're late. So, that's sort of what he does on the back end. I thought as far as pass protection, they did a pretty good job, I thought, overall. But I think on the back end, although the Eagles beat them a couple of times when they were in man, and they turned out to be really important plays.
What did you think also? Again, we're not seeing Hurts under center, because in week 1 against Green Bay, it was like, wow, this is about as much as Kellen Moore's offense you might see. He did everything week 1. Slowly but surely, we're not seeing it. I think I don't know if it was you who said it, Greg, or someone else told me, but man, play action works so much better with the quarterback under center.
I think it does. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it does. I mean,
okay. Do you feel like, explain that, Greg, for let everyone understand under center versus shotgun, how much there's a difference for play action and so forth.
Well, just to let you know, Hurts has dropped back 181 times this year. Okay, that's how many times he's dropped back to pass. 170 of those have been in the shotgun. So only 11 dropbacks have come with him under center. So they're not an under center offense. Now, my guess is I'm not there. Then I'll answer your question, Adam, for the audience. My guess is it's a comfort thing because I think Kellen Moore would like his quarterback to be under center more than 11 times out of 181 dropbacks. But the reason I believe that play action from under center is more impactful for what you're trying to accomplish, which is to give the look to the second level of the defense and sometimes even the third level, because sometimes safeties get nosy, to give the look to the second level. We'll stick to that. You're trying to put them in conflict. And the longer it takes for them to stay in conflict, the better, I believe, the play action can be effective. So when you're under center and you start and the quarterback takes the snap and starts to work back to the back, it takes a little longer to get to the mesh point. Okay. And linebackers who have both a run and a pass responsibility have to wait to see which particular one they play. When it's shotgun play action and it's quick, they know immediately what it is. And they can get, if it's play action, they can get to their pass coverage responsibility quicker.
What about the idea that when you're in shotgun, Greg, often, and now you're seeing more pistols, so this negates, and the Eagles do that too a little bit, but many times you're in shotgun, the running back's either to the right or to the left of the quarterback. So it's a little bit easier to decipher, potentially, not always, but the direction or the route of the run play, as opposed to if the quarterback is under center and the running back is 5 yards behind him, you don't know which way that run might go.
Yes, there's a little less versatility with an offset back than there is with a quarterback under center, which is one reason teams do a little more pistol play action, but that's still quicker because you're still, the back's right there behind you, just 2 yards. So it's a little quicker. But the pistol still gives you theoretically the full complement run game.
Right. You mentioned pass protection was good. This
I thought it
was
was pretty
Saquon.
good.
Yeah, from the O line. This was Saquon Barkley's lowest rushing total of the year. What did the tape show for was the reason for that?
Um, just not a lot of room. I mean, the run blocking wasn't as strong. He didn't have gaps to run through. They started the game, I think, with a toss outside where he did gain 9 yards. I don't know if that was his longest run. He may have had a 10-yarder, but
I
but
thought that was. I think you were
yeah,
right about that. But
yeah.
yeah,
Um,
either way.
right. But I mean, there was not a lot of room. I mean, he did not have much room to work with inside at all. So it was just a game where they could not get the run game going. He still carried the ball 18 times, which is probably what they want. But they started out working to the edge and they kind of stopped. They began the game, as we said, with a Barkley toss. They started the second possession with another outside toss. Then you didn't see much of it.
Mm. What did you observe about Juergens, and what have you seen from him this year as a run blocker?
I think Juergens is a really interesting guy because I think, and again, this is something we spoke about with our Patreon group as well. I think that Juergens is at his best when he's an angle or leverage blocker, or when they use him on fold blocks or pulls. I don't think he's at his best when he has to just man up and just block nose tackles, big nose tackles with base and drive blocks one-on-one. I don't think that's his game. He's just not strong enough, I think, to do that consistently.
And the
So
defense can try to force that, right? When they put a guy over him straight up and crowd.
yes, I mean,
right.
yes, you can put a D tackle in what we call a zero technique, where he's right over Juergens.
Right. All right. That's interesting. Jason Kelce struggled the same way earlier in his
Struggled the
career.
exact same way in many ways. Obviously, I don't want to say he's Jason Kelce. Kelce's a Hall of Famer, but he's a similar style player.
Right. Right. I know Adam used the expression in the post-game show that he felt the Eagles left meat on the bone in their offense, specifically their passing game. Would you agree that the tape showed that there were opportunities to do more?
Yes, I think, well, that gets into Jalen Hurts. I think there's always meat left on the bone with Jalen Hurts because there are certain things he just doesn't see in the way in which he needs to see them. So there's always some meat left on the bone. But keep in mind, we talked last week that when I said when Brown was back, they'd work outside the numbers on vertical throws.
Yep. Exactly.
That's what they did. And they're 50-50 balls. Now, you can make the argument, and I think it's a very valid argument, that Brown has a special skill on 50-50 balls. He tracks the ball with incredible eye coordination. He's got a natural feel for using his body to shield and control corners. I mean, he's as good as there is in the league on those balls, but you still can't make a living throwing them.
Right. Greg, one thing you told us about, gosh, when they made the trade 2 years ago, right? You love that bang 8 play, right? That I think Todd Downing, the OC, was running with Tennessee, and before him,
the bang 8 or the skinny post.
Yeah, skinny post. And man, do they do that at all?
Rarely. I mean, I think that's a good play to run, but again, you guys know me. I'm not going to sit here and say, gee, Kellen Moore's doing a bad job, because I'm not there every day and I don't know what he's dealing with, all the stuff that goes on. That's a great route to run versus single high. It's a great route to run.
I'm surprised because look, I get it. It's all what the quarterback wants, right? It's
right.
What's he's comfortable with.
Single high requires precision, timing, anticipation. Okay.
Yeah.
I think even if for those who like Hurts, I would say that's not the strength of his game.
Right.
I mean, for those who are older, think Troy Aikman to Michael Irvin, the timing and anticipation on those throws. And sometimes, depending on the other underneath coverage, sometimes you got to drive it. Sometimes you got to take a little off and throw with what we call firm touch. So those are, they're really, it's a really good play against cover 3, single high. But, you have to hit your back foot. As you're hitting your back foot, you have to be transferring your weight. Believe it or not, I had this conversation at a Super Bowl a number of years ago with Troy Aikman, and he said, the reason you don't see many skinny posts is not because it's not a good play. He said because quarterbacks are not really taught how to play the position that way now. Where they drop back from under center, hit that back foot, immediately transfer your weight, and throw it. They're not really taught.
So that slant, yeah, because the slant play is so hard to defend. It really is. And with
Brown's really good on in-breaking routes too.
I know.
He's so big and he catches the ball. And he's really good run after catch.
when you told us about that bang 8 play, I just went back and watched the tape. I'm like, my God, Tennessee would run it. I don't know how many times. It's the Tannehill 3-step drop, 5-step balls out,
5-step. It's 5-step plan,
5-step.
transfer, throw.
Yep. And AJ's forearm, he just would block off the guy. The guy would bounce right off him. It's a beautiful play.
If you're in the gun, it's a little more of a 3-step because the gun is, you know, but under center, it's 5-step.
Well, Greg, you did say that AJ Brown wins on in-breaking routes. So this is a second quarter, third down. And in this play, Jalen Hurts, and, you know, we made the point last week that he brings AJ Brown a physicality to the offense that is not a lot of guys can bring. I mean, he's rare, right? So this is third down that's going to be thrown short of the sticks. Okay, and you see the Browns loading up front and on the right side.
And by the way, you see, just go back. See
Yeah.
what we were talking about with the late rotation, how the coverage look changed? Because what's just stop it there, Geoff. Before the snap, what's Jalen looking at? Too high, right? Too high structure. So what do they go to? They go to a single high structure with kind of a robber, and they're playing zone though. So it ends up being zone coverage. Okay, because you can tell by the corners too. Nobody's matching up in underneath coverage. Looks like they're rushing 5. Yeah. Are they rushing 5?
Oh wait, 5, 6, 7, 8.
They may not.
No, they're not.
They're 4. Matching 4 because they are going to match the back man to man.
Right.
They have to.
Rushing 4.
Garrett drops right here. So yeah.
So it's a zone concept.
Yep. Now watch where he catches the ball. I mean, that's pretty good coverage right there for third and long.
He's got him.
You just
really,
got
but he doesn't have him.
Actually, wait. There's still a chance. Nope. That's what AJ Brown does for this offense.
And that was Denzel Ward, I believe, who weighs about 180 pounds.
Yeah. Denzel Ward and then a couple others couldn't make it over there in time. But that's a physicality, right, that they were really missing in those 3 games where AJ Brown.
But just go back for a sec. Go back for a sec.
Okay.
Now you can run it. Yeah, if you're just running now.
Yep.
See, I think this is a play, and I'm not saying he made the wrong read because, you know, I don't know how they do this. But as soon as I think he saw the rotation, I'm sure he felt that safety, who became the post safety, was going to slide more into the middle because it's very easy for someone to look at this and say Devonta Smith is wide open on the seam.
Yeah.
Normally, if a safety drops from one side into the middle, the other safety is going to rotate into the middle. So it's very possible that's what Jalen saw, and he knew he had bailed off coverage with AJ Brown.
Right.
And so that became his throw. So this is not one of those, like I said, someone might look at this and go, oh my God, how did he miss him? But that's not the read based on how the defense ended up with their rotation.
Right. All right. So we also are going to talk a little bit about some plays where there was Jim Schwartz doing some things, leaving meat on the bone, you might say, the Eagles in the passing game. There was a play that people have asked a lot about. It was the JOK sack on Hurts, which was like right before the halftime. And it seemed like it would have been a good opportunity for the Eagles to make something happen there.
It's a fascinating play on both sides. Let's look pre-snap, okay? So now this should be very clear to people. What is Jalen Hurts seeing? There's no safety in the middle of the field, correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's a zero look, zero coverage look. And how many people are on the ball on defense? There's 7 defenders, first-level defenders on the ball. So right now, his initial look, he's saying to himself, zero coverage, sell out, all out blitz. I have an opportunity for a big play. If we can protect this, and even if there's one guy who may be clean, possibly, depending on who it is, I still think I have an opportunity for a big play. Okay? So that's what he's thinking. And in fact, he changed this play. Now, again, we know he did something. That my sense is that's what he changed it to. He changed it to a pass because he saw what the Browns were showing him.
Right, because it was 3rd and 1, if I'm not mistaken. This is the play right after Saquon went out of bounds a little bit too early.
Right,
correct?
Right. Now, I'm not getting into, people can say, well, why didn't they do the tush push? Why didn't they give it to Saquon? That's not relevant for our conversation right now. That's just second guessing a play, which, people in the 700 level do. I don't do that. So, so the point is they actually had this protected because what they're going to do is Saquon is going to cross the formation, he's a little slow in reacting because he does not need to have his eyes inside based on how they're protecting this. And he's responsible for Owusu Koromoa, and he just gets there a little late. Because as you run this, watch Devontae Smith run his route. He's the slot to the top of the screen.
Yep, right slot.
He's the right slot, so you can run this. Touchdown.
Ooh, that's a
Touchdown.
touchdown.
Yeah. So if you go to the end zone, you'll see that this should have been picked up. So what they're going to do is here. The reason Barkley, I'm assuming he knows the protection, okay?
He sees
So
it.
everybody slides to the right. You see that? The line slides right. That means Barkley has to cross the formation to get to the person on the left. He's slow to do that. He does not have a responsibility as part of the slide. The slide takes, because a slide is a zone concept. So they're taking care of everything there. Barkley has to cross the formation to the left and pick up any free blitzer to that side. That's Owusu Koromoa. He was late to do that. If he had picked him up and blocked him, we have a touchdown.
Absolutely. Barkley cost him a touchdown with his hands, and now he costs him one a couple of weeks later with a bad blitz pickup.
That's a bad whiff. That's a bad whiff.
So when you slide like that, the way slides work for the audience, a slide is a zone concept in protection. Opposite the slide is man. Barkley was the man blocker in that scheme.
It was a rough game for Barkley, as you mentioned, Greg, and you talked about the difficulties in the run game for him to find space. But I wanted to focus in on Juergens here and let you kind of describe some of what you were talking about with the angle blocking or drive blocking that he, when he has to do one-on-one here. So
right, 43 is not a big defensive tackle, though.
No, but I believe he's going to roll. He's going to have to slide here to.
He goes and gets 93. I believe that's Shelby Harris, is it not?
Yes, it's Shelby Harris, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can see
what happens is here. Go back. What happens is because 43 is over the center. Now Dickerson has to come and try to get to him, and it allows 43 just to get inside a little bit, and gain some penetration, and then Koromoa is also clean because there's no one to block him.
So with the rules, if 43 is just not there and they're playing a different front and no one's there, does Juergensen just jump up and cover 6 or whoever's in the way, and then that creates Dickerson gets this guy, he gets this guy, and then there's the gap that Juergens would go run up into?
It's a 5-man front, okay?
Right.
So you've got to block the 5 first-level defenders. I mean, however you want to block them, you've got to block them.
Right. So if he's uncovered, if it's a 4-man front, he gets to jump out into the next level, right?
Yeah.
Right. But here he's got to hold up on that block. And we've seen before Saquon be able to get skinny through a hole, but this kid, he gets no opportunity to
because he starts to go with a downhill path and he sees that there's nowhere to go. So he looks for, normally the way inside runs work, inside zone type runs is you're looking to hit a certain gap. But if you don't feel that gap is there, you just start working. Get next gap. Obviously an inside zone run isn't meant to go all the way outside, but you start working to the next gap. You're trying to find a place to get through.
Right. All right. Last one, real quick, because I think this one maybe better illustrates some of what they ask of Juergens in this game and difficult. This is another Barkley run, and he's going to get swarmed for -2 on this. And it looks like, right off the snap, you can see in the center here, Juergens, you have the head up lineman right on.
I think it's more of a no shade, I think.
Well, a little shade. Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
But see, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to give him angle blocks.
Yes, angle. Thank you. That's what I was getting at.
It's an angle block.
Right, because the actual lineman is not necessarily head up and shaded. He goes in, Becton takes him, and then
Becton kind of misses the block.
You know what it is? I think that's Mike Hall.
It is.
It is. Yeah.
From Ohio State.
First game. Yep. First game coming off the suspended.
By the way, explosive as hell. I did him coming out.
Yeah.
That is him.
You're right. Yep. You see the shade, so that enables him then.
That would be called a 2-eye. Where Mike Hall is lined up. He's a 2-eye.
Right. And then
bam. Becton misses his block, but the play's going the other way. So what's really more important here as you keep going is
you just can't drive him back.
First
Yeah.
of all, you get Garrett rushing, working upfield,
Yep.
but the other D lineman does a great job. I can't see the number. The guy who I believe is a if you go back to the snap, I'll tell you.
Is it 90?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that God, now I
And
can't remember his name. That's
he's
not the
a
same guy.
4-eye.
Sheldon.
Maurice Hurst, who came off
yes,
IR.
Hurst,
Yeah.
Hurst.
He's a 4-eye. He's quick too.
Yeah.
He's the one
Oh,
who
yeah.
really makes it. He's the one.
Yep.
Garrett and Hurst really make this play.
Right. They collapsed.
Greg,
out
overall, though,
side.
you thought that Jurgens has played well. Greg, you thought Jurgens played well this year, though, overall, correct?
Given
Just overall.
what his game is, yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That's why I pointed
Yeah.
this out. It seemed like the opponent, when you put 5 guys on, which the Eagles in that way and muck it up and put guys over him, then you cause him to have to be a little bit more of try to be a power player.
I just want to make 2 positive points on 2 plays about Hurts, because I think it's important because they ended up being critical plays. They did go no huddle a couple of times, and he recognized coverage, and he called a mesh concept, which worked on a 13-yarder to Smith, in the first half, and then the 45-yard touchdown, which was the exact same play. But both times they were in no huddle. Now that doesn't mean he can't be spoken to, but at some point he's responsible.
Yes.
So I thought he did a really good job on those 2 plays, because obviously the Smith 45-yard touchdown was probably the play that ended up winning the game.
Right. Mesh concept meaning, for those who don't remember, that's when you have crossing routes.
2 shallow crossers, mirrored crossing. Yes.
Same against New Orleans, correct?
It was the same
Similar?
play where
Yeah.
the New Orleans defenders ran into one another.
Yeah, I thought so.
Goddard had the 61-yarder.
It's a mesh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cover 1 mesh, and then the head coach says, "You sure you want to run that against this team?" I think I've seen some nightmares.
Yep.
All right, great stuff, Greg. Awesome tape breakdown as always. Not just the all 22, but even all the observations you made, the pass rush win rate, who stands out to you when you watch the tape. We will do it again next week after the Eagles play the Giants right here on Inside the Tape. For Greg Cosell and Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks for watching Inside the Tape. Catch you on the next one.